arguably Crash's finest outing on the PlayStation, and still a great platformer to go back to this day, even if you just beat the trilogy on PlayStation and Xbox and Steam. You can't have the PlayStation Classic without including the greatest game of all time. Well, actually you can, because Metroid Prime didn't come out on the PlayStation 1, but everyone's favourite runner-up most certainly did. Metal Gear Solid is an absolute must.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. But enough talk. How about you?
The game that single-handedly kept 2D games afloat in the 32-bit era, by shamelessly stealing concepts and gameplay mechanics from Metroid, which, in spite of being developed some 11 years prior, still didn't entitle them to first dibs on the genre name. Metroidvania, my ass. For most people's money, this was the best entry in the series and definitely the best classic Resi game. 2 discs, 2 protagonists, and a game so nice they developed it twice. Resident Evil 2 needs to make the cut. But if it doesn't, the remake will be out in January anyway, so honestly, who really cares? In a perfect world, they'd pull a Nintendo, again, and sneak in Resident Evil 1.5 as a bonus, but that's definitely not going to happen. Easily the best entry in the series, and at the time, car combat was all the rage. Twisted Metal 2 is your classic popcorn flick sequel. Take everything the first one had and dial it up to 11. Twisted Metal 2 is just what you need if you have a sweet tooth for vehicular violence. So if you're hungry for carnage, grab a box of Jaffe cakes and let's blow up the Eiffel Tower one more time. More survival horror, you cry? Absolutely. Silent Hill is a bona fide classic which delivers a more psychological horror than Resident Evil. Even to this day, if you utter the word Silent Hill to the people who work at Kojima Productions, it'll send a chill down the spine. Another absolute classic which belongs on this list. With its wonderful, easy to learn, hard to master gameplay, it exploded in popularity in the PS1 era to such an extent that Disney and the fucking Simpsons had a go at making clones. Now, sadly, due to copyright and licensing issues, there's absolutely no way this thing makes the cut. But there's also no way I'm leaving it off my list. Let's be honest, the original Tomb Raider games have aged terribly. Awful, uncoordinated tank controls mean that unless you're willing to spend an hour getting to grips with the controls, you're going to be turning this one off within 5 minutes of locking the butler in the freezer. This is another game that's very much of its time, and honestly that's where it should stay. The franchise has been purely iterative over the last 20 years, so there's really no reason to go back and play this, but in spite of that, it was huge at the time, so it belongs on this list. yet another title that's in the process of being remade for a new generation, or more appropriately resold to an aging generation. Whatever your thoughts are on the exploitative natures of the gaming industry, this is a great game and another one that belongs on the list. I remember that. Yes, you do. And so do I. And frankly, that's literally the only qualification for it to be on this list. Well, that because running sideways and shooting people is still fucking awesome. Remember what I said about Symphony of the Night single-handedly keeping 2D games alive? Well, I wrote that before I remembered Oddworld. Oddworld, like Symphony of the Night, stole all its mechanics from existing games. In this case, Another World and Flashback. But it did it so well and added so much charm with its witty characters and cynical universe that it definitely deserves a place on this list. Every classic games collection needs to have an underdog, and this underdog single-handedly kept 2D gaming alive during the 32-bit era by raping and pillaging A Link to the Past for all it's worth, but with one very important twist. It's on PlayStation. Wipeout is another franchise that's synonymous with the PlayStation 1. Now, whilst the first title suffered from sluggish controls and a very dull colour palette, the sequel really kicks things into gear and made for what many consider to be the best entry in the series. One of the earliest and most charming titles on the PlayStation 1, and although it would eventually be overshadowed by its much more popular sequel, I didn't play that one, so this is what you're getting. So that's my list of titles that I'd like to see on the PlayStation Classic. Did I leave any out? What would you have chosen? And which successful Nintendo product line do you think Sony and Microsoft should rip off next? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section.